You are more than what you do. You are more than what you have done. Your life is more than the sum of the mistakes that you've made. So, no matter what the shame might be telling you, your personal record of success or failure does not determine your worthiness. You're listening to the Life Edit Project podcast, where busy, ambitious high achievers get the tools they need to fight perfectionism and overwhelm so they can smash their goals without all the drama. I'm your host, recovering overachiever turned professional life coach, Elizabeth Burrows. Let's get to it. Good day, good people. Welcome back to episode 64 of the Life Edit Project podcast. As always, I am your host and your most favorite life coach on the interwebs, Coach Elizabeth, and I'm super glad that you have joined me once again today. Um, I've got a juicy episode lined up for you today, and I cannot wait to dig in. Today, we're going to be talking about how to move forward after making a mistake. Spoiler alert, it's simple, but it ain't easy. So, I do hope that what I have to share with you in this episode makes the process a little easier for you because y'all know I like to make things easy for you. Speaking of easy, do your girl a favor and take like 5 seconds to share this podcast with someone. You can drop the link to your favorite episode anywhere you want in the group text with your homies, or take a quick screenshot right now as you listen to this episode from your smartphone and share it to your IG stories. Whatever's clever. I just want people who dig the show to spread the love with people that they're connected to, because they'll probably dig the show too. And I dig anyone who digs me. You feel me? Y'all are my people. So I appreciate you. Thank you in advance. If you do share this show on social, remember to tag your girl. I'm at Life Edit Project, all one word, in all the places. So thank you in advance for supporting the show. All right, back to the topic at hand. I've actually wanted to do an episode on this topic, moving on from mistakes, since season one, since I started the show, but I never got around to it. But no matter what other topics have come up, no matter what other ideas I've had, no matter what else I'm inspired to talk about, this idea, this topic is one that has never fallen off of my list because it's literally been impossible for me to ignore. It comes up when I'm coaching myself or when I'm getting coached myself. It comes up when I'm studying different coaching techniques and different materials so that I can better serve my clients. And at some point, it comes up with every single client that I work with. Why? Because, real talk, mistakes happen. And since I tend to attract people that are like me, both to my coaching business and to tune into the show, I tend to attract lots of ambitious, high achievers and people who struggle with perfectionism at some level in their life. Because, yeah, hi, me, recovering perfectionist here. So, all my people have a hard time dealing with mistakes. They have a hard time accepting the reality of the mistakes that they've made, dealing with the consequences of them. And yes, moving past them is really hard. And that struggle usually includes a battle through the field of shame and judgment and fighting back against the super loud, really mean inner critic that makes you believe that you can never recover. But I'm here to tell you today, my friend, you can recover from any mistake. But it does require a healthy dose of forgiveness aimed right at yourself. And yeah, that sounds super obvious and really simple, but it's easier said than done. Because if it was that easy, everybody would already do it. And we wouldn't have to have a show like this, right? So I'm going to give you a few tips on how to actually do this, how to actually forgive yourself and move on from a mistake as we dive into the rest of this episode. Ready? Let's go. right, if you're a long-time listener, you already know what's about to happen. I can't just give you the one, two, three on how to move on. I have to set the stage, lay a good foundation first. We have to make sure we're all on the same page, right? Because if I just jump right into the meat, your brain is going to argue with me and offer you all the reasons why this process, the process that I'm going to lay out in this episode, why it won't work for you and your mistake and your situation. So let's start by thinking about why moving on after a mistake is so hard in the first place. What is it that gets in the way of you forgiving yourself when you've made a mistake? I find that there are a bunch of things that can be getting in the way, but there are two things that come up over and over again from person to person. First up is shame. So, shame is that feeling you experience when you believe that making a mistake or doing something wrong means that you are wrong as a person and therefore unworthy. If you are ashamed of a mistake that you've made, it's going to be real hard to move forward because that feeling of shame prevents you from showing up the way people do when we believe that we deserve another chance, when we believe that we're worthy of more. Shame will have you believing that you deserve to stay where you're at because of what you've done. And if you buy into that, yeah, you're going to get stuck and you can't move forward. So, yeah, shame makes it hard to move past mistakes. But another thing that also makes it hard to keep going after you've made a mistake is having unrealistic expectations. And I know I recently did a whole episode about high expectations. Go back and listen to it. But it's worth bringing up here in this context because it's relevant. If you're the kind of person that has perfectionist tendencies, lean in because I'm talking to you. If you expect yourself to be perfect or to get everything perfect on the first try, you have unrealistic expectations. And that's just the facts. Because perfection isn't a real thing to aspire towards. You can aspire towards excellence, towards consistency, and continuous improvement, even. Those are all great things to aspire towards. But if your goal is perfection and only perfection, you will fall short and you are setting yourself up for disastrous effects. And the reason I say unrealistic expectations hold us back is because a lot of us recovering perfectionists, and those of us who are still pre recovery, a lot of us are holding on to our unrealistic expectations because we think that that's how we push ourselves forward. You have this burning desire to achieve more, to grow, and to move forward. And so you're always stretching, you're always trying to go a little bit further. But here's the thing, stretching, when it's done wrong or when it's taken to the extreme or when it's done at the wrong time, stretching can be harmful. If you have unrealistic expectations that are overstretching you, you will be too hurt to go anywhere, much less move forward. So now we're clear on two of the biggest obstacles that stand in your way when you want to move past a mistake that you've made. We can see how we get stuck in the mistake. We get stuck in the shame. We get stuck in the cycle of unrealistic expectations. So, how do we move forward? Well, it starts with forgiving yourself, which is a process in and of itself. If you have no idea where to start with forgiving yourself after making a mistake, here is what I want you to do. Number one, stop over identifying with the mistake. You are more than what you do. You are more than what you have done. Your life is more than the sum of the mistakes that you've made. So, no matter what the shame might be telling you, your personal record of success or failure does not determine your worthiness. You deserve another chance as long as you're here and as long as you're willing and able to keep trying. Earlier this season, I did a whole episode about self concept. And the whole premise of that episode is that you can and should intentionally choose your identity. Now, I highly recommend that you add that episode to your playlist if it's been a while since you've heard it, or if maybe you're just new to the show and you haven't heard it yet. It's episode 41. It's called Who Do You Think You Are? Listen to that show. but here's some of the cliff notes. The reason you should choose your identity is because if you don't choose your identity on purpose, you will choose an identity by default, and your default choice is usually whack. Really, really whack. The way you see yourself when you're on autopilot and not being intentional is never going to be as helpful as the identity that you craft for yourself when you think about who you want to be. And adopting a self concept that is based more on your potential and your future than it is on your failures and your past is going to be a big part of having the capacity to forgive yourself. You can forgive yourself because you believe that there's more inside of you, that there's more to gain if you stand up and try again, more to your story if you just keep writing it. But you can't get to that belief if you are believing that the mistake that you've made is the same thing as who you are. So the first step in this process is to stop over identifying with the mistake that you've made. The next thing that you should do in the process of forgiving yourself to move on is to accept the reality that mistakes happen. Now, I know this might sound like a step backwards, right? We're trying to move on from the mistake. Why, Coach Elizabeth, are you telling me to look at the mistake and dwell on the mistake? Hear me out. Mistakes are a reality, not just for you, but for everyone. When you recognize that mistakes are an unavoidable part of life, it's much easier to find a path forward because that's just literally the human condition, fumbling around and failing our way forward. That's what we do as humans. You're not a huge, massive failure because you have experienced failure. Failure is just a part of the process, it's just a part of life. Messing up is natural, and none of us get to opt out. So, just because you spend 80% of your life living up to your potential and being amazing doesn't mean you get to opt out of being a hot mess express every once in a while. And even if you're living 80% of your life as a hot mess, that doesn't mean that you can't also be great. You still have greatness within you. Everyone who's achieved anything or has gotten anywhere in life has also made mistakes. There's no one that you can point to that is mistake free. If you can learn to accept that mistakes are a part of reality for you and for everyone else, then you can start to expect mistakes and they don't have to be the kiss of death when they show up. And sure, mistakes will still hurt and they'll still cause disappointment and discomfort, but they don't have to automatically disqualify you from your future. Just because you were a terrible partner in your last relationship doesn't mean you can't work on having a healthy relationship now in your current relationship or with your future partner. Or just because you were a mediocre student in undergrad doesn't mean that you can't take your education seriously now and go back to grad school. Or just because you lost your temper with your kid this morning doesn't mean that you just settle into being a bad mom forever. No, you acknowledge your mistakes, you learn from them, and you decide to try for something better next time. Accept that mistakes are a part of reality. And then the third thing you do is to plan your next move. Hear me out. Don't skip this part of the process. To complete the cycle of forgiveness, you need to make an effort at restoration. And you're not going to restore what's been damaged on accident. You've got to make a plan for it. What can you do to restore whatever it is that the mistake has damaged? And there are going to be internal damage and external damage. Internal damage is going to be specific to you. It's going to be about how your feelings maybe have been damaged or your confidence in yourself has been damaged. And that's where you need to focus your efforts at restoration. External damage is about thinking about how you can get back on track, keep moving forward toward your goal, toward the original thing that you were striving toward when you made the mistake. Let me give you an example. Let's say you had started a new healthy eating plan and you did good for a while, but then you fell off the wagon and you ate a bunch of things that weren't part of the plan. And now you don't feel good about them and they don't even feel good in your body, right? So, what do you do to move on from a mistake like this? The first thing you're going to do is stop over identifying with the mistake. Just because you made some poor eating choices doesn't have to mean that you identify as someone who is unable to make healthier choices, right? Those decisions are separate. They were one moment in time. And as time moves forward, you can make different choices. Two, you're going to accept the reality that mistakes happen, right? So you're going to accept the fact that if you're on a healthy eating plan, not 100% of your eating choices are going to be on the plan. And so when you make a choice that doesn't fall into the plan, you don't have to spend so much time beating yourself up or feeling bad about it because it's not meant to be followed to the T 100% of the time in the first place. The third thing you're going to do is plan your next move, right? How are you going to set yourself up for success with your future choices? Go ahead and stock your fridge and your pantry with eating options that align with your plan. Come up with a few ideas for how you can satisfy a craving that you have without derailing your entire day's worth of eating choices, right? Go ahead and make a plan so that the next time you have a choice, you are equipped to make a better choice than you made based on the mistake that you've already made. So, those are the three steps that are absolutely necessary to forgiving yourself in order to move on when you've made a mistake. But I'm going to give you a fourth step here. And I'm saving this for last, but really it's the foundation to the first three steps. And that is this: love yourself. Or more specifically, be a loved one to yourself. If someone you loved came to you about a similar mistake, the kind of mistake that you're, crying your eyes out over right now or beating yourself up over right now, how would you respond? And it's really important to stop and ask this because this is a great way to calibrate our senses and to calibrate our self-talk because it's often easier for us to find the balance between kindness and accountability when we're thinking about someone else, when we're thinking about especially a person that we love and respect. But if you're not used to handling yourself with love and respect, it can be really hard to start from this perspective. So I want you to practice thinking about yourself as a loved one. I also want to remind you that it's important to remember that you can hold yourself accountable for your mistakes without being a jerk to yourself. Showing yourself compassion is not the same thing as letting yourself off the hook. It's actually a necessary condition to move on from your mistakes in a healthy way. So keep that in mind. Self love is the fourth step in this process, but it's actually necessary for the first three to be able to be successful in the long term. And this final step, self-love, is also the exact step that so many perfectionists struggle the most with. So, what do you do if you don't know how to love yourself through a mistake? You get support. Lean on someone that can model a loving relationship for you and learn how to apply that love towards yourself. Lean on someone who can offer you loving accountability and show you what that looks like until you can learn to do it for yourself. And if this is the kind of help that you need, if this is the kind of support that you've been missing, lucky for you, it's one of the things that I do for my clients as a life coach. So book a call with me to sign up for my one-on-one coaching program and learn how to forgive yourself no matter what kind of mistake you've made and finally be able to move forward. There's just too much of your future that lies ahead of you for you to stay stuck in a past mistake. So let's do this, yeah? The link to get on my calendar is in the show notes, and I'm ready to get started when you are. All right. That's all for today, folks. I will be back in your ears next week, this time with a special guest, but always another juicy conversation. Until then, peace. Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. If you have a question or a favorite insight from today's conversation, I would love to hear from you. Send me a message on social media. I'm in all the places. My handle is at Life Edit Project, all one word. And of course, my accounts are linked up in the show notes to make it easy for you, so holla at your girl. I'll be back in your ears next week with a fresh episode. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Life Edit Project podcast wherever you like to listen so that you don't miss a thing. Until then, peace.